they'll come, the varroa mites come out of the cell, find another cell, reproduce in that cell, find another cell, reproduce in that cell, until they are manually removed from the hive or killed. Varroa mites keep reproducing. If they need to recharge their nutrients, vitagelatine, they'll reattach to a honeybee and suck vitagelatine out of the fat bodies of the honeybee and then go back to reproducing. Small hive beetles don't have to have that. They don't do it that way, but they keep reproducing. And if you have mother, daughter, granddaughter, great-granddaughter, great-great-granddaughter, if you have 5 generations all reproducing at the same time in a hive, it doesn't matter if it's queen right or not. It doesn't matter how hygienic the bees are. That hive's done. Now that don't happen very often. But if I don't tell you all the bad stuff that can happen, then if it did happen, you'll say, well, he didn't know what he was talking about. Everything I tell you, it's happened to me.
How do you treat the ground?
Yeah, that's good.
I use crushed limestone. And I use it because it's effective and it's cheap. And if there's any one quality that stands out about me, it's being cheap. If my wife was here, she would say amen to that. But crushed limestone, like ag lime.
Put your ground underneath.
Now, if you just have a few hives, diatomaceous earth will do the same thing. But I have a bunch of hives, so I want to use crushed limestone. And I put it about this deep on the ground. Scrape the ground clean with a hoe and put the crushed limestone. Once you scrape it clean with a hoe and put crushed limestone about 1 inch deep on it, you won't have to scrape it again that year because the pH is going to be so high, won't nothing grow there. But crushed limestone etches the exoskeleton. In other words, it makes a lot of small cuts on the skin of the small hive beetle larvae as they crawl across it. They don't have to go into it to pupate. If you spray the ground with Guard Star is very effective, but if you spray the ground with it, the beetles have to go into the ground. They have to pupate in that ground where you sprayed it. If they crawl across it and get to a place that you didn't spray, it's not effective, but or not as effective anyway. But crushed limestone or diatomaceous earth is effective just by the beetles crawling across it. Now all the traps work, but they depend on bees driving the beetles into the traps. Beetles don't just run and jump off in that oil for kicks. They have to be forced into those traps. Swiffer sheets will catch a bunch of beetles, but likewise the beetles have to be driven. They have to be harassed until they're trying to get away from the bees. And if your bees are not of the sort that are going to harass the beetles, or if it's a small cluster and you got way too much room in the hive and a lot of protein in the hive, the beetles are after protein. They don't care about honey. They're after protein. Larval skins and pollen. Pupa and larva are the last choices for protein, but they're acceptable. And they'll destroy the hive if the bees don't harass them into jumping into traps, or if the bees don't keep the larva cleaned out. And a hygienic hive will keep the larva cleaned out. But I use crushed limestone. Some people like to use salt, but salt, the crystals are too big to be that effective at cutting the exoskeleton. Crushed limestone, something that feels smooth to us, the salt don't feel smooth. Salt crystals are too big. But the crushed limestone feels smooth, the diatomaceous earth feels kind of smooth, and they cut the exoskeleton. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Hey, I'm a brand new member, and this is my first year. My name's Andy, by the way. Beekeeping. In fact, I went and bought all the gear and ordered my first package of bees before I even started looking online. You forgive the French, it's just scared the hell out of me. I've got, specifically to small hive beetle, I live just a little bit north of here in Falling Water, and I'm kind of sandwiched between 2 high features, and I've got about a 120 or 140 foot canopy over 2.5 acres where I'm trying to make my apiary. So I was like, as soon as I got online, everybody's like, you need to have it in full sun. I was like, I don't
It's
have
best.
that option.
It's
So-
best if they're in full sun, but it's not absolutely necessary.
Well, I think that's my issue, is because when I've been looking at all the blogs and I've been looking at videos and I've been reading, I saw that everybody's like, if it's in the shade, you're gonna get small hive beetles. And so behind the investment I made in my hive boxes and my bee package, so I went and bought a whole bunch of extra. I've cut down probably 50 trees. I've planted a half an acre in wildflower, trying to get ramped up for this first spring. So I'm kind of excited about my bees coming in, and I feel like I've made all the preparations, and I've even read about the diatomaceous earth, made that purchase as well. But is there anything else that you could tell me, short of cutting down every tree I got on my property, which is not an option?
I think you're going the wrong direction with this apology thing.
And the trees came through. I've heard a lot of people are talking about how they have their colonies in mountainous areas and even in shaded areas, and that the bees, especially for like sourwood honey, is good production. So I'm not as frightened as I was when I first started, and this is before I started laying waste to my timber. But I've left enough to where I have a nice looking apiary, and I've got dappled sunlight now that I feel pretty confident about. But what would you tell me, or any other beekeeper in here, if they did not have the option of just clear cutting their property, and that they were gonna have like dappled sunlight coming through a high canopy, and they've cleaned, I've got no underbrush left at all. That was about 3 days behind a tiller. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm starting off with my hive boxes. They're going to be in some shade. It's not going to be full sunlight. What would you recommend that I do?
Well, I think that an interpretation of that question is, how long is it going to take me to recover my investment in this thing?
I'm not actually, no. No, the money's not much of an issue. It's the quality of life. It's just something that I can do with my stepson. I'm excited about doing it.
The thing is that bees will survive in deep shade. They just won't thrive as well as they will in full sun. They're okay in shade. There's more than, it's a multifaceted thing, being in shade versus sun. In sun, bees start working earlier in the day, a lot earlier in the day. Well, bees can't remove the beetle larvae and eggs from a hive if they can't see to fly, or if they're not flying outside the hive. So in deep shade, they don't start their work of keeping the hive clean, so they're kind of behind. They start later in the day every day, so they can't get as much done and can't keep the hive quite as clean. But they will survive in shade like that, or dappled sunlight, like you said. They'll survive. And this is not really any different of a question than I get where I live. There's lots and lots of cultivated cropland. There is tons and tons and tons of chemicals used.
Right.
And the question I get at home is, how are my bees going to survive with neonicotinoids? How are they going to survive with all these other third generation, generation 3 fungicides? And it's the same answer as, how are your bees going to survive in deep shade? The answer is, you do the best job that you can with what you can control. We can't control chemicals at my house, and you can't control how much shade there is there without clear cutting your property, which you don't want to do. So you do the best job that you can, keeping the hive queen right and keeping it pest free every other way. Now, if you eliminate all the other things bees have to worry about in a hive, they can take better care of the small hive beetles.
Right.
It's almost like your body and the reaction of your body when you take honey for an allergy. The pollen in honey don't have a lot of effect on your allergy. Because honey is not made from plants that produce pollen that we're allergic to in most cases. What makes the difference is honey is antibacterial and it coats your throat. it stops all these secondary things that your allergy's here, but you have drainage. It starts all these bacterial infections that develop in your sinusitis, bronchitis. Well, the honey short circuits all that by coating your throat and being antibacterial. It lets your body focus the histamines right here, rather than having to fight this and this and then this and this. It's the same thing with small hive beetles. If you can control varroa mites and make sure they have plenty of good food, a good laying queen, then you can keep bees alive in shade. Just do the best you can at the things, the best job you possibly can at what you can control. Yes, sir.
Okay, 2 questions. One thing is, just move. Please don't cut down these trees. We already try hard enough to save these trees. And where do you get crushed limestone from?
You can get it at a garden center if you just have a few hives. There's probably a farm supply dealer somewhere in the Chattanooga area where you can get the crushed limestone.
Is that,
Yeah.
is that the same stuff you throw in your garden to sweeten the ground?
Yep,
Okay.
same stuff, same
Yeah,
stuff.
they sell
You
it
want- you
everywhere.
want it to
Old
be
Walmart
powdered.
has it, every place sells it.
Yeah, you don't want the granulated.
The
What's
pelletized.
pelletized, that
No.
don't work.
No, you
It has
want the
to be-
fine
It has
powder.
to be the powder.
Yeah.
Yes,
Talking about splitting,
yeah.
and, we did a hive inspection Friday, all of them, we had capped swarm cells already. I made the decision Saturday to go in there and split that, I took my queen out, moved 2 frames of brood, now, is that crazy?
Do you have drones?
I've got, yes, I've got drones.
If you have adult drones, then it's not crazy.
One hive I had, what, 3 frames of full drone, capped drone.
But if you have adult drones,
We've seen.
you don't want to think about splitting a hive if there's no adult drones in the hive. But if you split a hive with a queen cell, using a queen cell, if the queen cell is capped, it could come out on any day because you don't know how old it is. But a drone needs to be 14 days old to be mature enough to make a queen.
We've got drones crawling around
Yeah.
there and the other hives.
If you want to age a drone and see if it's old enough to be mature, take a frame out that has a drone on it and hold your finger against the drone. Just push the drone down, don't crush it, just push the drone down against the frame. And if it buzzes real loud like it's really mad and you let your finger off and it flies off, it's mature. If it buzzes and you take your finger off and it just crawls away, it still likes a few days. And if it just sits there like, I wonder what's happening here. It's so young, it's too stupid to know. Hey, these wings work to get me away from whatever this is that's trying to eat me. And that's how you age a drone. The ones that fly away, they're used to flying. So they've already been out taking flights, taking mating, going to drone congregation areas. If they fly away after you hold them down and make them mad, they're used to flying, they're mature. The ones that buzz real loud, they're almost there, but not quite. And that's when it's safe to split a hive. But if you got drones in a hive and if you don't cut the queen cells out and don't split it, they're going to split. I mean, that's just, they're going to split themselves.
We haven't had,
That's just-
we've had bees, it'll be a year in April, so we're still learning all this, and I seen that, and I thought, hey, let's try it and see.
Well,
I think it's early,
next
though.
year, next year, there's always this next year clause with beekeeping. Next year, when you see drones swarm cells this time of year, you're gonna say, well, you're either gonna say, that worked pretty good last year, I'm gonna do this again, or you're gonna say, I'd better cut these out, because that really didn't do much last year.
It's early, and we
So,
won't use that.
it is early. To be honest, what I would have done in that case is if the drones I was seeing were mature, I'd have probably just made the splits. And if there were a bunch of swarm cells in there and they were really nice, big, fat swarm cells, I'd have probably cut them all out and made a bunch of splits if the drones rolled enough. Because some years, the best part of the queen rearing season is right at the beginning. That's not very often. Most of the time, the worst quality queens that you get are going to be the first ones of the year. Most of the time, that's because of the drone pool. The drones just aren't there to saturate the congregation area where the queens will be mated real well. But you just can't outguess nature.
I mean, if I go in there in a month and I don't have a laying queen in that, with those queen cells, or can I combine them two back
Yeah,
together?
oh yeah. Yeah, you can always combine them together. Yes, sir.
Well, I guess as a follow-up question to that, how early is it to put out bait hives?
As soon as you see swarm cells, as soon as somebody in your area sees swarm cells, it's time to start putting out bait hives, and that's a good.
Right now, or
that-
March, or?
Well, he's already seen swarm cells, so, and if you're talking about right now or March, you're talking about today or Thursday. Yes.
Well, I had a question. He said he saw cap swarm cells. Did you see your queen?
Yes, I caught her, put her in a sweater.
Okay. But in my experience, usually when I see cap swarm cells, it's already.
A swarm most of the time
already
will leave
swarmed.
before the queen emerges, before those virgin queens emerge. And that's just a survival mechanism for the queen. Yes, ma'am.
So if we make splits, usually in this area, April 1st would be the time you want to make your splits. But if you're trying to graft queen larvae to grow your own queens, is it not too early? Because you have to have your queens grafted right now, or you'd be late already actually, if you were going to put queens, proven queens in
An April 1 split.
Right, so how do you do that? I mean, how do you split and get a queen? How do you do it?
What I do is everything that I'm going to split, I break it down into mating nukes. And I've been doing this for a few years because I tried it. I heard a beekeeper from California say that he'd done this and it worked. And I thought, well, everybody in California is not stupid. maybe, well, there's another one that's not stupid. There's two of them. But anyway, what I do is I used to graft and put that graft in a cell builder hive and let them build the cells. And now I graft and put the graft in a cell starter. The very next day, 24 hours later, I take those cups out and put one cup in each mating nuke. It's a started cell. A mating nuke, a 2-frame mating nuke, will finish one started cell. They won't finish 5, but they'll finish one started cell. And success rate's great with it. I get way more queen cells net out of it than I used to, because used to I'd have all of them started and a third of them would be torn down because they couldn't finish them.
Right.
And now they all get finished. But I break everything I'm going to split, I break it down into mating nukes. And if I'm going to make a split, I'll make 2 mating nukes rather than 1 nuke, because I'm using 4 frames of bees. I have 2 2-frame mating nukes. Figuring that I'm kind of a cynical person, you know. But I've found that it's way more comfortable to be cynical than optimistic, because being cynical, if something just totally flops and don't work, I said, well, I knew it was going to happen anyway. So I was right. But if it actually works, I'm happy, because, you know, I'm okay to be wrong if what I did actually worked, right? So being cynical, I'm figuring one of those probably ain't going to have a queen come back, especially early in the year. When we're having stormy weather, you're going to have a lower percentage of your queens return from mating flights. Wind, it's nearly always wind that causes it. Later on in summer, it'll be predators. But early in the year, early in the season, up until around the 1st of June, it's nearly always wind. And I've got a big hive here and I'm gonna split it. So I take 5 or 6 frames out of it, leave everything else, and in that case, I'll leave the old queen in this hive, and I'll make 2 mating nukes here, put a cell on each one. If both of them take, that's great. If one of them don't, then I combine them, and I have 1 nuke ready to go right then, but it's got 4 or 5 frames of bees in it with a new mated queen. But you can do that. See, if I grab right now and I put a cell in tomorrow, 1-day cell in tomorrow, it's going to be another 9 days before that queen comes out. At least 9 days, maybe as many as 10 or 12. But it's going to be at least 9 days before the queen comes out. That's mid-March. She's going to come out, take a mating flight, and we'll probably have a mated queen by the 1st of April, but by mid-March, we'll for sure have drones. What you got to be cautious of is cold weather, you know. And that's just a chance you take with early queens, raising early queens. Yes?
Okay, so I just started last year and my bees made it through. But when I got in there last week, I have nectar and I have pollen and I have honey and I have lots of bees. But I don't have evidence of a queen. What does that mean?
Well, that means you didn't see her and you didn't see any evidence of her. But I mean, right now at this time of year, that could mean that the hive has gone queenless over the winter, or it may mean she just hadn't started laying a lot yet. What kind of bees do you have?
Randy?
Italian.
Italian queens.
Mutts. I mean.
Yeah, if they're primarily Italian, usually the queens start laying according to light of day. Light of day and resources is going to start the queen laying eggs. Maybe she just hadn't started yet. Give her a little bit more time, and give her until the weather breaks a little bit better. And for one reason, where are you going to get a good mated queen now anyway? I mean, Hawaii, maybe. But, I mean, you can get Hawaiian queens, but not everybody wants one. But anyway, give her a little bit more time, and if in 2 to 3 weeks you still don't see any evidence of the queen, go through it with, say where I live, with a fine-tooth comb, and see if you can find the queen in there. If you see an adult queen in there and she's still not laying, just be patient with her until you can get a mated queen. Now, when you can get mated queens, then you can threaten her. Yeah, you can hold something over her head then. But until at least the first part of April, it's going to be kind of chancy getting a mated queen somewhere. So right now, just kind of wait your time and hope that she starts laying. Look for evidence of her rather than looking for the queen. It's just 1st of April, if you're not seeing any eggs, not seeing any larvae, especially capped brood, if you're not seeing any of that 1st of April, then you can shake the bees all off of a sheet or something and see if you can find the queen out there. But, yes.
Are tracheal mites still a problem?
In some places, they're not the problem they used to be. That's the good part of it. But there are, you know, certain areas that still have a little issue with tracheal mites. It's not environment. It's just that the bees that have been introduced there are not very good at grooming the mites off, picking the mites off. And it's not something that's going to be persistent like it used to be. But it will show up from time to time. If your bees have K-wings and are crawling around on the ground, but they're not slick and shiny, and when you pull the midgut, it's not white colored, then you probably got tracheal mites. you figure that out, you know, just from process of elimination. Bees are gonna have K-wings because they have nosema, paralysis, or tracheomite. Those are the three things that cause bees to separate their wings. And there may be some other things too, but those are the three most outstanding things that cause that. Yes, sir.
How many queens do you think you can raise in one bee yard before you have to start increasing?
I try to keep my number of mating nukes under 100 in a bee yard, and I have 3 drone yards at a minimum, and the drone yards will usually have 16 colonies. Each colony has a frame of drone brood in it, in the box, and that I try not to go over 100 in those yards.
If you have drones, if you're also raising drones.
Yeah, but I am also raising drones. But
If I don't want to raise drones.
if you're not raising drones, 25 or 30 is about, if you're depending on feral bees, 25 or 30 at a time is. Now, it also matters how many people around you have bees, because one mating yard that I have, I don't own any of the drone yards. I give queens away to all the beekeepers in our association. If they want a queen, they come get a queen. And that has made me a lot of money over the years by giving away $20 and $25 queens. It's made me a lot of money because I didn't have to put drone yards out, because all the queens that I want raising drones belong to the Trout kids or Wes or, you know, Hoy, to the other beekeepers around that particular mating yard. So I don't have to own the bees, I just have to give them queens.
So you want those bloodlines, or you want those number of drones?
I'm wanting bloodlines. I'm wanting to know that it's not drones out of South Texas that's mating with my queens. Nice Kentucky queen ought not fool around with the drone. Yes, sir.
In your area, what type of hive configuration are you running?
I run 2 separate hive configurations. One configuration I run in the Mississippi Delta. A lot of people misunderstand. They think the Delta is in Louisiana. The Delta starts at Cairo, Illinois. And that's where gumbo ground starts piling up coming out of the north. And I hope that really chaps them if they lost all that good ground to us guys down south. But we have bees all along the Ohio and Mississippi Delta ground. And those hives I keep in a single 10-frame box, and I put a queen excluder on top of that and honey supers on top of that. Those are production hives that we make honey with. The hives that I'm using to raise queens out of, I keep in a double deep 10-frame. Now, I'll just throw this out there. You people that run 8-frame hives, I prefer 8-frame equipment for the sake of the bees. It seems like the bees do better in 8-frame equipment. But I've been keeping bees for 30 years, and I bought a whole bunch of used equipment, and it's all 10-frame, and I'm not switching to 8-frame because it don't fit the 10-frame stuff. You can make 8-frame equipment work with 10-frame equipment. If you use a division board feeder, the 10-frame box on the bottom with a division board feeder on it, and cut a slat about this wide to cover where the feeder goes in the hive.